I think one of my attempts too is to really illustrate to people, especially the healthcare providers, that we can actually play another game of expansion and growth and start to put our attention. And then that will naturally invite more people to get healthy. And I think
Absolutely.
that's an important piece too, is we really got to make it so people feel that they can do it.
Welcome to the Everyday Epigenetics Raw, Real, Relatable podcast. I'm your host, Susan Robbins, epigenetic human performance coach. This is where we discuss all things lifestyle, environment, food, exercise, work, mind, and social interaction as they pertain to epigenetic expression in a way that's relatable to everyone. So if you're ready to start viewing you as an individual, take control of your life and health, and get results, buckle up, here we go. Welcome to the Everyday Epigenetics Raw, Real, Relatable podcast. I'm your host, Susan Robbins. This is where we talk about everything lifestyle and environment and how it relates to our genetic expression in a way that is relatable to everyone. Today, I have another fun one, so buckle up. I have with me today Dr. Erika Schultz, and we are going to be neurodegeneration and Chinese medicine.
Woo-hoo.
Chinese medicine is, you all know that I do the PH 360 platform, and that has 15 layers of science built into it, into the algorithm. And all of these were vetted by the group before they brought it into the algorithm. They only chose the ones that actually had proof of working. And Chinese medicine was one of them. Dr. Erika is actually a doctor of Chinese medicine. She is an acupuncture and master foundational nutritionist. She specializes in working with high-performing women who are seeking natural solutions to hormone balancing, aging, and resolving chronic health challenges naturally. She gives people hope with solutions and resolutions to those who have plateaued in their healing journey. And she works with people who haven't, boy, is this going to be familiar? She works with people who haven't been helped by traditional medicine. The line is long. or haven't resolved their issues fully with alternative methods of healing. Because as we know, we are all so individual. Everyone's body is different in how it responds. I know mine is crazy. And anytime I'm told, like, nobody has issues with this, I'm like, oh, what a bet, right? We're all so different. So she has a system called the resiliency method, and she has a compelling story you're going to want to hear that's going to tie all this together and her reason for doing what she does. So I welcome Dr. Erika Schultz to our program today.
Thanks, Susan. It's great to be here.
And she's in Colorado. So we're like, oh, this is so cool. Right?
Yeah.
We're neighbors. I'm just up to the north. She's down south. Yes. I think let's start with Chinese medicine, because people hear Chinese medicine, and you have some people that are in the know and realize Chinese medicine is some good stuff. And you have others that are skeptical because it's Chinese medicine and it's herbs and acupuncture and whatnot. So I would love for you to talk a bit about Chinese medicine, and that way people can understand why it's such a wonderful thing to be included in the part of what I do for personalized health.
Yeah, absolutely. And you'll probably be able to resonate with some of the things that we'll talk about today in terms of your knowledge and background. I'll start though, because I think you brought it up a little bit in the sense of some people are like really skeptical. I think one of the issues around the skepticism from Chinese medicine perspective is that it's that we overcomplicate it. We make it sound like it's this whole other paradigm and this whole other way of thinking that somehow it's out here and you have to adopt another pathway of approaching health. And that's a bit of I think a way that we've led it in this country, and have probably done so in a way that's made that really challenging for people to understand it well. But I always tell my patients, I'm like, it's not a whole nother system and way of thinking. It's just, and actually a lot of that challenge came from the translation process, because the ancient people that were practicing Chinese medicine had various dialects in China. There's tons of dialects, language. And then a lot of the texts that were available when it was time to actually start putting textbooks together, because most ancient medicines, they're not, it's more of an oral process, teaching process. And you have any ancient medicine, you have a apprentice that you
Mhm.
teach, and that gets transferred down. And when it was time to write these things down, one of the challenges was actually making the interpretation, because the dialects used in that time period were very different from the dialects that were in use when we were developing the textbooks for Chinese medicine.
Wow. Never would have thought of that.
Yeah,
Never would have thought of that.
I know, total. And so that's an interesting piece. And I'm not a linguistics person, but yeah, that was apparently, I think it was a Frenchman. Don't quote me on that, but I think it was like a Frenchman that actually knew this dialect, and they brought him in. So some of the issue is in the actual linguistics, and some of it is in the idea or the notion that we just don't really talk about it in a great, clear way for people. But at brass tacks, the Chinese were really good at doing human dissection. And so when they had a cadaver, they actually were meticulous about opening it up and examining how everything was connected to everything else. So that's really where the channel and meridian theory comes from. It's
Okay.
actually the way that it's the mapping of how everything's connected to everything else in the body. So if you just looked at the liver, you would see that some of the arterial vessels go up to the eye and then go down into the leg and out between the first and the second toe. And that is the liver channel, for
Oh,
example.
wow.
So you've got organs in Chinese medicine and you got channel theory. And in graduate school, most of us in our exams, our national board exams, are really based off of a lot of a lot of attention on organ theory. And really, so just like in biomedicine and functional medicine, where a lot of the interactions take place is actually in the channels. So it's almost like you can look at it in a couple of different ways, and both of them are relevant. It's just that when you're actually trying to just demonstrate some level of proficiency from a very rich medicine that is really extensive and
Mhm.
complex, you got to boil it down. And that was a national board exam based off of 4 years of arduous full-time study in Chinese medicine, and then another. Now they do professional doctorate. That was to achieve a master's degree. Now it's like you could do the 4 years as like a professional doctorate, like
Okay.
chiropractic medicine is.
Okay. Okay.
So, yeah. But yeah, there's just so much. One of the first things I conceded when I started the program was, "Erica, you're never gonna know everything about this," because there were so many different ways of approaching things. There was influences from Korean, from Japanese. So and all these different cultures had a little different, not, I wouldn't say it was different, but a slightly different approach that had been passed down in so many different ways. And that's the beauty of it too, is because you can really use it to actually do what you need to do with that particular individual body. Right. And so it becomes really customized. In my actual practice, acupuncture, the act of putting needles into,
Acupuncture.
which is it's just an aspect of Chinese medicine, right?
Sure.
And on the respect to acupuncture, and going back to what I was talking about with the Chinese medicine or the ancient Chinese, they would actually study those longitudinal pathways
Mhm.
where everything connected. They also determined that, and this is proved in modern science, that acupuncture points, there's a higher concentration of what's called a neurovascular node. So there was actually, what that means in layman's terms is there's a little bit more electricity, conductivity in the area of these acupuncture points. So all of that has been like actually backed up by modern science. Probably the most extensive studies have been done in the context of pain. Most of those modern studies are coming from China, but yeah, so
That was a flying post-it.
oh, it was applied post.
Apparently that my post-its are now hazardous. Raw real.
Sorry about that.
You can't make this up.
So yeah, the studies have been really focused around many of the studies have been really focused around looking at it from a pain standpoint. And most of those come from China. There's more to do, obviously, in terms of integrating this into our current medical system. And if you ask me, there's too much attention on placebo-based trials and studies. Those are things that work, I should say, fit the model more of the drug, of the pharmaceutical model. And if we divert to just talking about medical research in this country, we're primarily set up to do it that way, right? We're really looking at the evidence-based model of medicine becoming really focused around placebo control-based studies. And those work really well for drug studies, but they don't often work well when you're talking about medicine that is individualized for each individual, for each person.
Exactly.
So I think the opportunities we have as professionals is really just to expand that definition and focus on the fact that evidence-based medicine is built on, there's many different variations of that. It's not all just placebo-based studies which work with drugs,
And I think any of these studies, any of this research with these control groups of people, and I love that you're talking about this, because one of the reasons I put clients on here and I say, I'm not the deep science-based podcast. I don't have all the studies with rats or right? Because individuals differ. They vary in how they respond to things.
Yeah.
So I want to have people on here to show that we're also individual and it's real. It's what I see is real practice, because I don't care. Like the longevity people.
Yeah.
Everybody should be doing the cold plunge.
Right.
Everybody. Sorry, don't get me near a cold plunge,
yeah.
right? My body does not handle that. I have clients that they couldn't handle that.
No.
So when you start grouping all this in because of the research that's done, I prefer to think that what you and I do is researching with the individuals and
Every
how
day.
people
Yeah.
can relax. I think it's so much more beneficial than these lab studies that are done. And maybe I'll get hammered on that, but I really don't care. Because I just see such a difference.
We're talking about Chinese medicine, so it's a good parlay when you're talking about the cold plunging to talk about, there's basically 8 principles of Chinese medicine, and one of them is looking at temperature.
Oh, yeah.
Hot versus cold, right? So in Chinese medicine, they would look at heat in 2 different contexts. They'd look at heat in terms of an excess pattern of heat, and there's also excess and deficiency. Let me pull those 2 things in because they actually go pretty well together.
Okay.
There's an excess pattern, which would be like you're on an airplane, you got exposed to a flu bug and you contracted it. You were out playing volleyball, you fell incorrect on your ankle incorrectly, and then it started swelling up. And that's an excess pattern. And that would be an inflammation, like you'd immediately to an inflammatory response, right? You would have some swelling, potentially some redness. That would be an indication of some heat in the area. So in that, let's take the volleyball example. You would essentially want to start putting some ice on that ankle to reduce that acute swelling that's happening in the tissue and help manage it. Now, the acute swelling is happening because your body's doing everything it should by design, which is sends out the army, sends out the troops to go in and repair that injury. And that means there's extra fluid there. That means there's extra blood there, all the things, which when you add any extra, you're going to start seeing an increase in fluid or an increased size, if you will. So swelling, right? Okay, great example. Pull out the cold and help counter all that heat that's in the tissue, and that makes you more comfortable, right? It helps your body kind of like, okay, great, you're bringing the troops in, but we want to modulate the discomfort of bringing those troops in, so we're going to use some ice. Now, let's fast forward and let's use another pain example and talk about, let's say, frozen shoulder.
Okay.
Now, frozen shoulder, if you're talking to an ortho, would be some kind of, probably labeled as some kind of like tear or some sort of injury that just got unnoticed or something. in the past. And there's usually, all of us are bodies, so we can usually find some kind of example where maybe that was a scenario that came to fruition. But actually, frozen shoulder has more of a chronic, long-term pattern to it in the viewpoint of Chinese medicine, which has a lot to do with actually some hormone pattern involved in it.
Oh, wow.
Now you're talking about the involvement of tissues and organs and such that are playing into that whole scenario, right? So that's an example of what might be like a pain syndrome, but actually would have more cold retention. Because the Chinese say that anything that's a pattern in the body that's been more chronic in nature would have cold retention in the tissue. And the reason being is because if there is some disruption from accessing blood in that organ or that tissue for a long period of time, and we can talk about what would prevent access to those tissues and why cold might form, that would actually be a deficiency pattern. So you can be like, I've got shoulder pain, and the studies say that shoulder pain can actually bring in, if we shock the body with cold water, will actually bring more blood flow to the area. Absolutely. You'll increase probably some endorphin activity in the body. And that's that euphoric feeling that many get when they throw their bodies into ice cold water. But it would be counterproductive for fixing your shoulder because the pattern of that shoulder pain
stems from cold.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, and there's
Makes
many
sense.
examples where you can look at that too. The thyroid, you're into thyroid stuff, so it's another good example. Hypothyroid, anything that's hypo would be, or deficient, right? Another would be a cold pattern.
I know there's a lot of thyroid patients that listen to this podcast. Would that be why those of us, I'm hypo also, we tend to be cold. I run cold.
Yep.
And when I get cold, it's hard to warm up.
Yep.
Because it's a cold based.
Exactly. And it's a cold-based pattern.
Interesting.
However, what'll happen, because your body's smart, if there's a hypo situation going on, it's always trying to heal.
Sure.
It's always in action around healing, right? So what does it do? That stress it makes an attempt to heal. Or you take a supplement, something that upregulates the thyroid for a minute.
Take the medication, right? The thyroid
medication. One of the dangers that I see with my chronic thyroid patients is they take a lot of supplements too. And if they aren't customized, or if there's an additional testing procedure that's going in to make sure that works for thyroid, they could actually be aggravating the scene and making things worse. So, and that's a good example, because I always call the thyroid this little delicate piece of china in your grandmother's cabinet, and you just want to pull it down. And your mom's, don't touch that. That's the thyroid. She's the principal, and she's really picky and selective about what goes in, because if you take the wrong herb, the wrong supplement, you're going to create some heat in that area of your body. So this is where we go into, it's not just heat created by an acute situation, but there's actually heat that can be created by a chronic situation. Chinese medicine calls that empty heat.
Okay.
So that'll look like, even though I'm hypothyroid, there's usually these periods where I go to lay down at night and I'm just like this.
Wide
awake.
Does that relate to cortisol imbalance?
Monkey mind. Yes, it can. Yep. Monkey mind. But the cortisol balance can also be related to this pattern. We'll talk about the pattern of the thyroid in a minute. I can get into more of that detail. Okay. But it's like also a hyperactive thyroid that's at play.
Even if you're hypo.
Even if you're hypo. So that's why hyperactive. Yep. That's why hypothyroid can actually patients can see an increase in sleep disruption as well as anxiety. Yeah. So like almost like the depression state of, and I think, do you know the stats on that even? Let's talk about that.
I don't know the stats.
Oh my goodness. So on the anxiety depression front, it's estimated by the Endocrine Association that there is, or Association of Endocrinology, I should say, that 80% of diagnosed anxiety and depression is
All
related
right.
to thyroid imbalance.
That does not surprise me
Yeah,
one bit.
80%.
God.
And then it's also a factor of like 80% of thyroid conditions are actually subclinical. These I'm rattling off statistics that are probably like 10 years old. I'm gonna be frank with you on that. So this is probably even worse at this stage.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Guaranteed.
It's so that means 8 out of 10 women are likely walking around with a thyroid issue that's undiagnosed. And I'm
Well,
sure you know some of the issues with that when we're talking about blood testing, right?
oh, absolutely. You're
Yeah.
normal. You're
Yep.
normal when you're anything but normal.
Yep. And
It drives me nuts.
they're either just looking at TSH,
Oh,
right? Which is TSH is thyroid stimulating hormone, which is that's a measure of how well the pituitary is doing, not the thyroid, right?
yep.
So
Yeah.
that's the first issue, and then the second's the ranges, right? It's
Yeah.
yeah,
Terrible.
and
Terrible.
that's pretty typical across the board when you're looking at Western. If you're looking at labs, you're looking at the Western ranges, which are set up to say yay or nay to do you qualify for a drug therapy
Uh-huh.
or qualify for additional testing to see if we need to take an organ out.
And they're also the labs base them. All the labs are different when you see reference ranges come in. So,
They are, yeah.
yeah. And
Yep.
I tell people there's a different place. My doctor said I'm normal. There's a big difference between normal or in range and optimal.
Right,
Big difference.
right. Yeah. Just again, that's rule in a drug, rule it out kind of thing. But folks like us are really trying to get that body to work at a functional level.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, this is hugely interesting. Okay. So tell a bit. I'm just finding this so fascinating with the thyroid. So many things going through my head now. This totally makes sense. Tell a bit about your story and how it brought you into the Chinese medicine and how you're utilizing it.
Yeah. It's a combo platter, which isn't unusual for people like us, right? Uh, but basically what led me I had always had a sense that I was supposed to be in natural medicine. Like I grew up with a family of chiropractors. My dad was a chiropractor, my brother, my twin sister. And but I just was like, I moved out to Colorado when I was like 22 or something. And I would always look at the Natural Awakenings magazine, I think is what it was back then. And like Boulder, Colorado was close by. So there were always these like crazy things. I'm like, never heard of that before.
Huh?
But I couldn't figure out what the path was. And then I had a 10 plus years in training and development, an awesome career that was really fun. I feel like I got a little MBA degree from working in that capacity inside of large organizations. But I remember being in a company meeting one time and I that we were it was a medical tech company, and our technology and our disposables saved a life every 7 minutes or something, and it was pretty cool, and then I remember hearing that stat again, and I was like, "But I wanna be on the front lines. I want to be touching the bodies."
Uh-huh.
And, so that just led to one thing after another. I had, plantar fasciitis in both my feet. My
God.
chiropractor said, "You can go 2 options. I can't adjust you out of this. You're gonna need to go get a cortisone shot, or you could try this guy up the street. He does acupuncture." And I was like, "Acupuncture?" And so I went, started treatment, and he said 8 to 12 sessions. By session 8, I was completely pain-free and never had an issue until later on, again with it. And as I would lay there in my sessions, I'm like, "Oh, I could do this."
Uh-huh.
That set me off, and then I got to my first year of grad school, got in, left that corporate career, got a yoga teacher training certification to help me make that transition, and then went to school. First year in, and my health completely tanked. And my twin sister and brother were learning this nutritional testing technique, and they were trying to show it to me. And I was like, that just looks woo woo and strange. And And then I finally got to the point, she's like, "Listen, I know you think it's weird, but this lady over here, she's in your town." I was in Austin, Texas. She knows how to do it, and go see her. And within weeks, I was like a different person. Then I went
Really?
from not thinking I was gonna make it through that program for the next 3 years to being so inspired to learn everything I could about functional medicine, clinical nutrition. I had some of the best teachers. I had access to some of the best teachers because of a local training center. And I'd go there on the weekends. I was just a poor student, and I'd wash the dishes, and they'd had the training piped in through the speakers in the kitchen. So I was like getting all my education with the perfect way, which is me having to be kinesthetic, doing
Yeah,
something
yeah.
else rather than sitting there anyways.
Oh,
And
really?
yeah, I just poured myself into it. We every time there was an opportunity to do the class, they would let me go and join the class eventually after my chores were done, just, like, learning everything I could. So then by the time I was in my 2nd year of grad school, I was like, "I need a part-time job, so I might as well start seeing patients." And I learned this nutritional testing technique called nutrition response testing, and I started a little practice as my part-time job, and that was a great way to start working with clients. Eventually, fast forward, saw great results. Fast forward, though, probably another 5 or 6 years, and there were just still some things that weren't getting fully handled. And when I had reached puberty, I started having grand mal seizures when I was a kid.
Wow.
And I had been on a little bit of medication throughout that time period, and really that was the one thing that was just always sticking over there. I saw improvements with my thyroid, saw improvements with my diet. But as time went on, I was like, I still haven't really seemed to make much difference there. And
Mhm.
then the seizures started to get a little bit more prevalent again. So I knew that I was missing something. The other thing that was simultaneously happening was I was watching a lot of my colleagues would coming in, and we travel together, go to conferences and such. And I was noticing how a lot of us in the healthcare profession field were really like restricted and really struggling with adapting to our environment well. And I knew that some of that seizure disorder situation was related to that as well.
Mhm.
And I knew a lot of that had to do with the nervous system. And even like that I started to see that really seizure disorders is almost just another variation of an autoimmune condition. It's just specifically with respect to the brain,
Okay,
also
okay.
the gut that's affecting neurotransmitter function and such. And so I just knew that we were missing some things. And I was just getting to the point where I would call it, I was just on a merry-go-round when just really getting a little bit more and more stuck, seeing people. Most of us were like eating 6 foods. Like that might be a bit of an exaggeration. We were very constricted,
Yes.
restricted,
Yes.
and having to control a lot of things. And then COVID happened. And I was like, oh my gosh, we're just like, everybody's concerned about what's happening around us and even at a more elevated level. And that's when my wheels just started turning. And I was like, gotta figure out how to take this further. And almost brought in the Chinese medicine background, brought that in. And this point, I'm seeing over 100 client visits in my practice, in my clinic in a week.
Wow.
I'm adding in additional practitioners. So I had the opportunity to see my this stuff get proven out in the context of multiple practitioners. And it just really started to come together. I feel like also just I just get like listening to guidance too in terms of which direction I needed to go, where to take it next kind of thing.
Mhm.
And that's ultimately I developed 2 more phases of working with the body. And I think one of the challenges that we've really encountered, it wasn't that what I had learned originally wasn't effective. It's still effective and it's still used because it really is great at a way of isolating what's some of those things that are turning on these genes inside of our bodies. And
Mhm.
toxins, we've
Mhm.
got, stealth pathogens. Sometimes we have scars dysregulating. Certainly foods can be a problem.
Big one.
Yep. Mold, Lyme, all of these.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Heavy metals, chemicals, glyphosate, all the things. So the system I had in place was really good at finding where those things were and then putting together a customized nutritional healing program to address them.
Mhm.
But it was still focused, and I think this is also where many people are as practitioners and clinicians are really at is it's still focused on just filling a dumpster up
Mhm.
over
Right.
and over again. And what my body needed was to clear that excess, back to the Chinese medicine speak. We needed to clear that excess, but ultimately we needed to tonify that deficiency.
Okay.
There were also certain things we needed to do to earn the right to tonify that deficiency, which was one of the reasons why some of our tools that we were using even 3 generations ago that were working just fine, in our current state were not working any longer. Because what we found is that just another generation of poor having exposure to all these industrial environmental toxins, having
Mhm.
exposure to these parasites,
Lifestyle. Yeah,
lifestyle.
lifestyle, how people deal with it, stress,
Yep, lifestyle. Well,
all of
and
it.
really and part of it too was, quite frankly, the deterioration of the brain tissue and the neural tissue in the nervous system was deteriorating faster and faster too. So even in my clinic, I was starting to see where the first part of my tenure of practicing, it was like people will be in their 30s, 40s, 50s before they started working on their health. Now they were coming in their 20s because they couldn't even hold down a job,
Yeah.
but couldn't move out of mom and dad's home.
Yeah.
And so I just even inside of that 10-year time period at that point was probably seeing some significant shift.
Mhm.
So basically, I just started to apply some of the Chinese medicine background, like I said, started to get access to some of the even better carbon-based healing products. And that afforded me the ability to really start doing some cellular detox, to do some clearing of phlegm in the body, which phlegm's a big one that's talked about in Chinese medicine. We can go into phlegm too, because that's
Yeah, I would love to hear a bit about that. Is that
yeah.
waking up with it in your throat or in the neck?
Mhm. Yep.
Never
Yep.
goes away. Never goes away no matter what I do.
Yep. And I have the answer for you to that situation.
Do tell.
Yeah, it's partly the way that we frame it. So after you fill the dumpster,
Uh-huh.
which again, this is where I was stuck with my health too. I did all of the dumpster clearing with the best products, the right order, saw the results in terms of still have the pictures. And I think everybody knows what I'm talking about there. But right after that period, I went to a conference with the people that are doing the same things. And I
Mhm.
literally had walking pneumonia.
You're kidding.
No, because there was so much phlegm buildup in my system. And I was like, I didn't have a bronchial infection. Like, why do I have
Yeah, how did this
pneumonia? Yeah,
wow.
because, and this will rattle you a little bit. And this will just, so we tend to be oriented to looking at phlegm as a excess or a exterior condition. In other words,
Okay.
go back to where we were talking about, you get on an airplane, you get exposed to a bug, and then you get all the phlegm and you get all
Uh-huh.
the nose blowing and all the things. Maybe you
Uh-huh.
take herbs, you get over it a little faster, right?
Uh-huh.
That's the only way we're really oriented to phlegm is through some kind of exterior pathogen. Or any other context would be just, I'm allergic to something in the air. So that's another principle of Chinese medicine is interior versus exterior.
Okay.
Okay. So that's an example of an exterior situation causing you to have phlegm. It's acute typically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Mhm.
That's not the only place that phlegm or the only way that phlegm is produced inside your body. Phlegm is an interior condition as well.
Okay.
Okay. Phlegm, and it's the same purpose, phlegm is created by your body in order to contain something.
Okay.
Okay. So it's body's so smart, sees that external pathogen, goes, can't have that here.
Yep. Doesn't belong.
Send them
Get it
out,
out.
send the troops out. Troops go out with their phlegm army and they can contain that, right?
I'm just picturing this, the phlegm army.
Yeah, the phlegm army. They go out, they see the pathogen, they're like, "No, sir, not in this body." They put a little wrap around it. You start blowing that out.
Yep.
You're out in the environment. You're at work and some kind of chemical exposure happens inside the building and your eyes start to water. You start producing more phlegm. Immediately, you probably go, "Am I sick?"
Mhm.
Or then you'll load. It's the allergy. Is it springtime? No, no.
It's the hay fever.
It's the hay fever. I'm trying to think of a thing in Colorado that sets up all the allergies.
Smoke,
Yeah.
from the fires.
Mhm.
That'll flare you up pretty quickly.
Yeah, especially the chemicals that are
Oh,
in the
yeah. Brutal.
another conversation.
Huh?
Yeah. So anything that is non-optimal coming from the outside, which would come in through your ears, your eyes, your nose, and or that's internal, non-optimal, an army will get put together. Now, when there's a chronic situation where there's a need for phlegm, let's put it that way.
Okay.
Okay. Those containers start to get built bigger and bigger. And that's what becomes a cyst, a tumor, a nodule, a lipoma. Are you with me?
I'm jotting this down because I'm going check, check.
Yep. 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 It's a container. They're all forms of containers. They're all like your beautiful body doing
Yeah.
exactly what it's supposed to do.
I
Set
didn't know a lipoma was one of those.
Yeah. Basically, that's an example of a container, right?
Yeah.
A container gets created essentially by the tissue too that's around it. So if there is an area such as the nervous system that uses a lot of adipose, the brain and the nervous system, then you'll form little fatty masses
Hmm?
order and sometimes at the peripheral nervous system. So lipomas that are like in the body even or the arms or legs, shoulders or
I had one removed from my shoulder. Yours, it was the size of a golf ball.
yeah. So likely you could probably map that on trajectory of a part of the peripheral nervous system.
Wow.
Mhm.
Fascinating.
So containers, right? So really
Yeah.
smart. Now, we talked about earlier, just like if you're not getting though inside, if you've got a container and it's sealed, right? The challenge with that is that you can't get enough blood supply into that area. So I always say the difference between a really bad container and a really good container is what those cells inside and around the container start to do after a while. Yep,
Okay.
makes sense.
Um,
So,
Wow.
yeah, phlegm
So,
pathology, we would call that in Chinese medicine.
so if you wake up consistently with
Yeah,
phlegm,
yep.
what
So,
can you do? What can be done about that?
yeah, so that's
You start
it's an
looking.
indication that your body's at work trying to take the garbage out on a regular basis and with some good frequency. So if it's a daily thing, oftentimes, and especially if it's like in your throat and such,
Okay.
it's likely coming from brain.
Really?
Yeah. So one of the things that I've noticed with, for example, my dementia people that are that have Alzheimer's or dementia in their family kind of thing, oftentimes they'll have the chronic nasal drip like for years. They'll be like, it just always runs. And that's really in direct pathway to where some of the organ tissue is inside the brain, where that autoimmune process starts to form. And then the body's just like, "Oh, this is where the pathology's here. This is where the non-optimal tissue is." So I'm always trying to clean it up every day when you go to sleep,
Huh?
in the
The
troops.
lymphatic system?
Yep. And then it just, the pathway almost goes perfectly down to the
Mhm.
nose and or back to a postnasal drip. So a lot of the interior
Yeah.
brain
Totally makes sense.
directly down either posterior nasal drip or even through the nose. But yeah, That's essentially, that was the biggest aha for me. I was like, oh, so then once that builds up, Susan, eventually it'll feel sinus cavities, right? Nose, whatever, back of the throat, whatever. But also, and that aggravates the thyroid too, because this is a very narrow passageway here,
Sure,
right?
sure.
So you'll get double chins, thyroid issues, throat issues, because it's
There's
a very narrow passageway to
yeah.
clear. So I have all my patients, I'm like, you have to do like nasal rinsing, but also I have them like constantly clearing their sinus pathways, and then also doing even like lymphatic massage, especially through the neck, just to keep draining. Because yes, you're right. There's a lot of lymph in the brain itself. They call it
Mhm.
lymph, right? We found
Lymphatic system.
we have the proven science now behind that, so we can talk about that.
Yeah.
But the Chinese knew that with that 3 to 5,000 years ago.
Yeah.
But that all backs up. And so once it backs up here, it starts to go into the respiratory system, which is why then, so I'm like, okay, if you got chronic lung issues, pneumonia, allergy stuff, sinus stuff, you're probably needing some optimization with your brain and your brain tissue.
Wow. Now,
Mhm.
is that what you work with your
Mhm.
resiliency?
Yep,
So fill us
exactly.
in there because I guarantee uh, as I'm sitting here jotting stuff down and I'm checking the boxes, right? You talk about aha moments. These are big aha moments.
Yeah.
And I'm 100% sure that people listening are having aha moments as you're talking
Mhm.
too.
Mhm. So my patients hate it, but I always say them, tease them. I'm like, there's no such thing as allergies. They'll come in and they'll say, "My allergies are worse." I'm like, "There's no such thing as allergies." Because once I cleared this phlegm out of myself and my patients, right after we filled the dumpster with all the things, then after we did that, the anaphylactic gluten sensitivity
Mhm.
reversed. So the actual food sensitivity reverse. And when I tell people I reverse food sensitivities, they think I'm doing desensitization, like NAATT or
I've heard of that.
and
Yes.
then and I did learn an allergy clearing technique with my original training, but I didn't find that it actually ever was like a long-standing thing. But once I got people through this phase of the resiliency method, then their food sensitivity started to reverse. And then more importantly, we earned the right to do cellular detox at another level. That's when we started playing the gene game, which is the game you play.
Mhm.
And that's another that kind of forced me to have a little slightly different view on the whole situation with mold. So we can talk about
Mhm.
too.
Which is perfect. I just did a podcast on mold.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So I have a little bit of a different view on mold.
I'd love to hear it because I've also had Jason Earl on, who is the got mold guy.
Mm.
And then I followed up with a nurse practitioner who deals with it. So yeah, I'd love to get your take on it as well because it, as Jason has said, like the bringing in drywall, it's like the worst thing you could do. It's just exposing so many more people to mold on a
Oh,
chronic
yeah,
basis.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I know I've got it here. Property management, if you're listening, condo owner, it's coming.
The reality is if you're living you got a bunch of black mold in your current living environment, you're gonna have some impacts for that. So I'm totally agreement with that factor. You've got to make sure it's clean. But I also think there's an aspect of us cleaning this up enough so that we actually don't act like little mold radars when we get
Right.
to a hotel or a room or whatever, so
Mhm.
that our sensitivity to it isn't as poor.
Right.
Because the reality is that our ancestors, they lived in super damp and moldy conditions before we ever introduced some of those sanitation and procedures and some of
Yeah.
the proper building techniques that we have today. And all of those are vital. All those are important. And certainly making sure we're as tidy of an environment as we can. But when it comes to mold, I'm like, let's play a slightly different game with mold. Let's see if we can improve the adaptability of this immune system and this nervous system, which is really what I tell my patients is the issue. That's why you have allergies. It's because there's some non-optimization going on with your nervous system, so you can't adapt well to your environment. And then there's usually in conjunction some kind of, because those go in conjunction, some kind of immune deficiency going on.
Sure.
So your body is, both of those systems are dysregulated enough to where you're being super sensitive to your environment.
Mhm.
So inside of that, now we start to see a message of expansion, right? Because so many of us in the world of health, good intentions, all aside, I think all of these things, we got to clean up our food system. We got to clean up we got to put in better policies. We got to do better things with our environment, with our food supply. Total 100% agreement. We
Yeah.
also have to do an upgrade here as well.
Yeah.
Because now we've had multiple generations that have been exposed to these things, and we
Mhm.
have more epigenetic issues going on and more gene expression happening of the worst of our gene pool. But and we've got, like I said, we've got now that generation that was first exposed, they bred and they had, and so it's just like further and further more nutritional degeneration as the decades go on, which is why some of the tools that we and the systems that we're using even 40 years ago are as relevant, because we've had 3 generations now born to where
Mhm.
these things that we have new issues. And then 4 years ago, we added in this RNA vaccine, which was like
Mhm.
the first of its kind to go into our population. Not very, it's actually one of the better studied vaccines if you look at the data, ironically. But some of the people that were working on those vaccines originally are have their concerns and have been pretty vocal
Yeah,
about them.
absolutely.
And that's inside of the resiliency method, we do deal with that as well. So we'll deal with it in our first phase when we're filling the dumpster, and then we'll get to our third phase. And I'm with you, I'm talking really, so far we're at second phase. So second phase, but we're earning the right to get to the cellular healing in the
Mhm.
third phase. And so oftentimes we'll deal with the COVID vaccine there again. And so far I tell my patients, I'm like, fingers crossed, we're handling this, and the things that we're taking, the
Yeah,
actions we're taking by building up your body is making you more resilient to
right.
the fact that that is in your system, and that protein may never fully leave, but the
That's
expression
what I wondered.
of protein, yeah, the
Yeah. Is
expression
it
of protein, I think, is where
the
we're gonna
spike proteins?
play. Yeah,
The
yeah,
buildup of spike proteins. Yeah.
and I
I
think
some
that if we can, just like with a virus, if we have viruses in our DNA, it
Sure.
it's just, we wanna play the game of, let's create a situation where this is fully optimized so that we're not having the symptoms or the repercussions of that viral expression. And so
Mhm.
that's the same thinking around the spike protein. If it's in us, that we just create, the best terrain and the best optimization with the tissue and the organs, such that there's no opportunity for that to become expressed.
Yeah, we wanna make it an inhospitable environment,
Mhm.
correct?
Mhm.
To where the virus or the bacteria is, "Yeah, I don't wanna be here. Nothing
Yep.
here. Nothing to see here. Leave."
Yep.
All right? As opposed to, "Come on, it's a party," because
Yeah.
I'm so broken down
Come
that,
on to the dance
"Come on
floor.
in." Let's go, the more the merrier. Exactly. And what about cancer? Where would that does that play a part
Mhm.
in this?
So
Does it play a
good,
part in that?
great question, great thing. So that phlegm situation I was talking about
Mhm.
earlier. So in
Uh-huh.
Chinese medicine, cancers usually develop from the pattern of blood stasis. And then also what I would say is with a precursor of phlegm pathology, right? In other words, okay, body went to work. It says, I see some non-optimal situations here. I'm going to create a container around it. So you could find a blood stasis pattern by the way of the container. In other words, there's not enough blood, fresh blood getting in there, oxygenated blood with nutrients. So you start to have blood stasis inside of the nodule or the tumor, the cyst. So that's a difference from somebody that would get a benign test when they get that biopsy versus somebody that
Uh-huh.
positive test. Is the degree and potential, some other unknown factors to me too, but my theory really is that it's like the apoptosis is happening because of probably large part lack of blood, fresh blood to the area. And then we start to have cell death. that occurs with that. Because if you are having proper nutrient and blood supply to a particular area, then you're likely to be in some situation where you're in prevention mode of these things happening, right?
Truth.
Right. And I don't cure cancer, right? I'm just talking about the patterns that go into what may or may not make somebody more prime versus
More
an with that and being in development, right? Um, so blood stasis is really, that's a key pattern that we want to really address for the body. So blood stasis would form in the body from a Chinese medicine perspective as, okay, you were at the volleyball, go back to our volleyball.
Okay.
You do play volleyball, Susan?
I'm 5'1".
Pickleball, don't you?
I'm pickleball. Do pickleball? Yeah.
You could fall down on the pickleball courts too. I probably should my
I have
metaphor.
gone down on the pickleball courts.
I think quite a few people have. So let's say you're at the pickleball court. You land wrong after that awesome out of the kitchen move.
Yep.
And you bump your head. So this is a great example of blood stasis. This is one of the things that's so complicated around TBIs, people recovering from head injuries and such too, is that's a great, here's example of blood stasis in its full force. Injury happens, body sends blood to that area to repair. It's doing everything it should, right? The terrain in that brain is non-optimal for clearing that excess out, that excess of blood, and then you start having it stagnant, pooling, and over time having more and more complications from situations, right? But blood stasis inside your body is always being created as a part of cell evolution. So as a cell dies, it'll eventually create a situation where we have zombie cells. Senescent cells.
Senescent cells.
Yeah, senescent cells. I like to call them zombie for because that's what they are. They're just like, they don't need to be there anymore.
Yeah.
As we start looking at longevity, that's one of the implications of longevity medicine is to really promote the removal of those things from inside the body. And I'm in full agreement with that because you need to get to the point where you can promote the body's ability to do that effectively and clear out those senescent cells, those zombie cells. And when you do that, you're just you're vacuuming, you're taking away the ability for conditions to be such that there's some kind of conversation about cells going haywire, right?
Right.
Now, I want to go back for a second because I started talking about the mold thing and I didn't really finish with in phase 2, where what we've done with dealing with, because this leads us also into phase 3, because we have to do this in proper order or we don't really earn the right to get to play at phase 3. Okay. So phase 2, finishing up the whole mold conversation, why it's a little bit of a different viewpoint is if I have seen where if we detox at a cellular level, the mold in our cells, that increases the adaptability to mold in our external environment. Okay. And we can do that. And then that helps then also create an environment where we can rebuild from. The second piece that I missed addressing in phase 2 as well, when I was talking about that, clear out the excess phlegm. We've done that because you're actually, that systemic phlegm in your body will actually that's like your extracellular matrix. So that's what your body will use as its like trampoline for building new cells from. And that's usually pretty dirty from some of the things that we filled the dumpster with in phase 1. So in phase 2, the other component that we add in there is a liquid form of a collagen product as a foundation for building new, healthier, happier cells. So we clean up the environment with that. And then we do the cellular detox. That combination leaves a nice foundation for which to, and that's phase 3. Okay. So the entry into phase 3, though, is to really clear out some of this old blood. And some of the best way to do that, quite frankly, I found is Chinese medicine herbs. So I didn't use a lot of Chinese herbs in my process until this point, until I figured this out again and being informed by Chinese medicine. I'd mostly use Western, homeopathics, some
Mhm.
whole food nutrition if I could, where I could, but you have to earn most bodies these days, you have to earn the right for doing whole food nutrition. So we'll come back to that in a minute with phase 3.
And
Uh,
question on the herbs, by the time you get to this point, the herbs are based on the individual,
yeah,
not just you're in phase 2, so we need to just do these herbs. It's all based on
yeah,
what that individual needs.
yeah, and I would say there's a lot of crossover in my phase 1 with what a lot of other practitioners are doing, whether they're foundational nutritionists or functional medicine docs or functional medicine practitioners or kinesthetic muscle testers. The one thing that was nice is that with the muscle testing process and the nutrition response testing that I often did in phase 1, it could put it in the right order, in the right amount, and at the right time for people. So those people, I'm talking a lot of thyroid ladies, those people that were a little bit more sensitive to just, like, doing a protocol, were oftentimes really good responders with that process of dealing with it. But I've also partnered with a lot of functional medicine doctors to take their more complex patients
Mhm.
in order to take them just past that phase 1. And what we've seen there too is that a lot of the work that those docs and those practitioners have done was good. It was fine. It helped get the metals out. They could show that in a blood test.
Mhm.
That's awesome. But the real advantage in terms of how I offered value to that part of the process is really just for the more difficult, sensitive cases that just needed a little bit more specificity on how they went about it. Maybe the doc had some really great protocol, but was mostly herbal. This particular body was so beat up from that chronic deficiency pattern that it really needed to start with homeopathy to
Okay. Yeah.
sort of gently walk in kind of thing, and then we built some energy there, and then they could eventually do herbal treatment
Into
for
the herbs.
yeah.
Because sometimes the herbals aren't the best to start with because the body just can't.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean,
I
if you're
tried.
talking parasites and such, they're the best to use, but sometimes you gotta earn the right to do
Sure.
the herbs there. You gotta just give the body a little bit. There's so much damage. The homeopathy comes in place nice to help increase that energy so you can do the healing you need.
Yeah. I've experienced that when I was first diagnosed with Lyme, which took everybody knows on here 11 years to got it twice. Finally got diagnosed, and my naturopath said, let's use the herbals, start with those. And they floored me,
Yeah.
floored me.
Yeah.
So when we switched to, I said, I couldn't get out of bed. I was a wreck, like overnight. Now, granted, the one was supposed to be 3 drops, and I thought it was 3 droppers.
Oh,
So, yeah, my body was trying to balance, and it wasn't good. Every
yeah,
symptom came back.
yeah,
I tried even going back down to the just 3 drops. I couldn't tolerate it. Switched over to the homeopathic. She said, "Let's try this." Game change.
yeah.
Game change. It just was such a much more gentle, yet still pretty powerful. And people poo-poo homeopathics too, but I've had great results and have clients
Mhm.
that have worked really well with homeopathic.
Yeah.
All
I tell
different.
people, I'm like, it always looks like there's one solution, right? Because whoever wrote that book or did that talk or whatever, it was like it worked for them, and then they were shouting off the rooftop.
Yep,
But it's
that's
also
what I
like,
say.
yeah, it's
Is
not
the
necessarily
experts tout what worked for them or
exact.
what they saw worked for one of their people. So
Yeah.
I'm just cringe when I see these programs of everybody do this. So we're going to do my group program and everybody's getting the same protocol. And this is how you fix hormones and all this. And I'm just going, this is not fucking true. It's just, oh, my whole
Yep.
insides just, oh, even with looking at people to come on my program here.
Mhm.
When I started looking for people, I look at what they're offering, what
Yeah.
kind of things they're doing. And when they're the one size fits all, I'm not I'm not prepared to entertain that at this point. I could go into a debate with them why it
Right.
doesn't work, but I don't wanna I'm not looking to trash anybody's program,
No.
but I know from my standpoint, working genetically and how we're formed in the womb, we are also vastly different. And
Absolutely.
so anything that is exactly the same for every person. Any type of protocol, I just cannot agree with, and I won't outwardly support.
That challenge at times when you just hear there's a one size fits all approach, and your process, my process is very much focused on the individual. There's a need
Yep.
for really customizing and drilling down for people. And we see clinically the results of that with our process when we do that. And certainly that was like you and I as well in terms of our experience, which is why we're sitting here
We're having this conversation.
of that. And I've also come to appreciate that for some people, the place to start is protocol.
Yeah.
And either they have to go through the experience of feeling that pain of having the protocol not work, and or some of them will respond from it. And that's all good stuff. And that's where a lot of my functional medicine partner docs can really shine, because I don't know if you do a process where I think that you could actually probably make this transition for people easier than even I could, which is a lot of people need to see the blood work and want to spend some time putting in the amounts, the financial commitment to analyzing the blood work and things. And so it really, I think that model can be helpful for bringing people over from the medical model, the Western medical model, to like that. Okay, that is not really the holy grail. And
It's a piece. It's
yeah,
a piece
yeah,
that tells us something's off.
exactly. And those people aren't really my target market. I really want them already having gone through some of those stages of healing. It was a progression. It took you and I getting there too. We just don't remember it as well because it was a while ago now.
I don't forget it.
Yeah.
Oh, when you feel like shit that badly, remember that. And you say, I don't ever. That's why I make the choices I do and live my lifestyle. And really, I follow my PH360. I work with my DNA, because nothing in this world is as good as feeling good, right?
Oh man, amen. And what I meant was is we remember how, in other words, it's been some time since we had to be in the trough of the Western model. That was been a long time ago for people like you and I.
Yes.
I find myself just the average person just grinning and bearing it when they're they're on that rigmarole of the answer is with my medical doctor.
God.
I'm like, hey, if I was in an accident playing pickleball and I fell down and my bone was sticking out, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
That's where it comes in.
Yeah. Emergency
when it comes to this
care.
stuff, it has its place, right? Medicine has its place.
Yes. Yes. Western medicine.
Western medicine has its place. And then what we do has its place. You're doing these parts of the protocol. I'm all lifestyle. And what you said actually makes sense. When someone starts with me and they start to understand how they're created, live authentically, let's get them doing the right things at the right times.
Yep.
You're going to start feeling better. But when you have, like me, these little niggling things that just, if you don't have your lifestyle on point, you're not going to be able to tell what the hell's going on. You're going to look at labs and go, I don't know, my labs suck, but I don't know what I'm doing. When you are so dialed in, understand have that mind-body connection to know that something is off. It's not how I'm living. It's probably why I'm not a wreck and why I function as well as I do.
And that has to be in. That has to be in.
It has to play a part.
What I've done with my process is I've made it so that you don't have to be perfect in that. That can become, and that's one of the challenges we're up against, I think, inside of our field, is that we've have people that are really taken it to another level. So they're obsessed about it. It becomes very much a control thing. The pendulum starts to swing a little bit, probably too far at times, not in a way of judgment, but just like in a way of, let's see, we can play the game of increasing and expanding with our health rather than just restricting and being afraid of our environment. And in the power position of we're creating more expansion, more resiliency for ourselves and our lives and our communities. It's just like that tweak of, yeah, let's really see how we can expand. But the reality is if you're gonna be drinking Diet Cokes 3, 4 times a day and
Mm.
binging on a carton of ice cream and you're not eating and you're not putting enough protein in, we're gonna have some challenges.
Drinking that wine before bed every night
Yeah. Yeah,
to
I mean,
relax.
yeah, we're gonna have some challenges with getting you fully there, and certainly the healing process isn't gonna be as smooth, and then, of course, if the healing process isn't as smooth as possible, then there's just people but the counter to that too is I feel like one of the things and I know this was true for me when I started to wake up to that distinction point of, "Okay, maybe the answers aren't with my medical doctors." It still felt very intimidating to enter into the world of healthy living. Like, I almost had to be backed up into a corner before I was really willing to concede that in terms of I felt like I had to be, perfect, and I already could see in my life where the never enough was running the show in the background, and so that's I think one of my attempts too is to really illustrate to people, especially the healthcare providers, that we can actually play another game of expansion and growth and start to put our attention, and then that will naturally invite more people to get healthy. And I think
Absolutely.
that's an important piece too, is we really got to make it so people feel that they can do it.
Oh,
You know?
sure. And none of us are perfect. I don't care who the
No.
expert is out there. No one's perfect. And I tell people, I'm not perfect. You don't have to work this profile 100% perfect,
Yeah.
but make the changes. Start making a change, like you said, to be able to expand and bring these things in.
Yeah.
It's progress, right? Progress, not perfection. And every day, celebrate a win each day instead of beating yourself up over, I didn't do this right. What did you do right? Or what made you feel good? What was the change you made? So I
Mhm.
love that you brought that up because I think that's a really important part. And there's a couple of the health types that are, and one particular, my diplomats, are so geared towards perfection
Yeah.
that it can be debilitating
Yeah.
because they're all or nothing,
Yeah.
right? I'm going to be all in, or if I can't do it perfectly, I can't do it at all.
Yeah. And
And
I just
that's,
came
yeah,
back from a retreat this past weekend with a bunch of other, done some of the top health contributors, healthcare practitioners in the world right now, and amazing people at this event. And one was sharing with me how her marriage is ending and the criticism that exists inside of their context. Actually, that was a conversation of more than one person that was similar in the sense of that marital issues are coming up because one has a very different viewpoint on how things should go in the household versus the other, and then it starts to become like a little bit of a point of contention. So then you can see the judger and and that just creates all this conflict because they're just not on the same page. But then I'm sitting there going, I can see both sides.
yeah,
If you're driving it so that everything inside the home has to be perfect and he has to be just and he has to look a certain way and he has to be perfect, then it's okay, you know,
nobody lives up to that.
nobody lives up to that
Nobody.
and no client stays on with me if I was to introduce to them that overnight we're gonna rehaul your diet and we're gonna do
Yeah. So I said I would just give you a profile and say, Go have fun." But it's a
Yeah.
process, and food isn't number 1 necessarily for any of the health types. It's not the priority. There's other things, and whether it's mind, social, place, the surroundings, like you were saying, you might have one person where their surroundings are their number 1 priority, and if the partner isn't there, they don't understand it.
Mhm,
Why they have to have a place for everything, why they can't have chaos or mess because
mhm.
if it affects them to their core, where the other person might be just like, "I'm gonna throw my shit everywhere." And it's lifestyle. And I was actually talking to my guy about this weekend. We were talking about how compatible we are because we have the same lifestyle. And I said,
Wow.
I haven't found anybody because it's so to have someone that lives my type of lifestyle. I'm very
Mhm.
action, go, go, go. I do know how to relax, but someone that isn't like that, it's a clash. It's a big clash. And we just don't realize we talk about what's your favorite color? Oh, you like to eat the same things. You like to go play this sport, but when it comes to the home environment, how you are, what's your chronobiology? Are you a day person, a night person, or a morning or night? That is crucial. And we don't ask those things.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do now. but I didn't before either. I say doing what I do is a blessing and a curse. I've had guys I dated say, "You're analyzing me." I said, "No, I'm understanding you and how you work," which,
Mhm.
like I said, right now it's a good thing. It's helping him understand me understand him better. But we just don't tend to bring this into relationships. It's all about, oh, do I get along with this person? We like some of the same things, but living situations, are you a slob or are you not? So
Yeah.
it doesn't surprise me that both, and how interesting that the people you talk to, same in that same space, it's their lifestyles are not compatible.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know if they were communicating their lifestyles as much as it was down to I think what I saw was there's a gradient difference in terms of the way that they were incorporating these things. And I think sometimes we as healthcare practitioners can tend to swing the pendulum so far to where we start to become a little bit more of the judger when
Oh
it
yeah,
comes to evaluating those
been there.
partnerships and
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
you know,
Like a food
but
Nazi. We
If we go down this path,
we
we'll
could. Yeah, we
have a
better get
whole
off
nother
this because we
podcast. Let's finish up talking about phase 2 because there's
yeah,
something I wanted to say also specifically for your sake, because you were talking about the line piece, and I
yeah,
think a lot of other people can relate to that. And inside of phase 2, that aspect of what we were talking about in phase 2 is very helpful for the line people because it allows them to start repairing and rebuilding an extracellular matrix that doesn't necessarily contain that those bacteria in there. And and that really can propel the Lyme situation further. Just like in phase 2, we see a lot of improvements with people that have had mold exposures and such. Because if I take that off the cells, then their ability to adapt to their environment, it gets better.
yeah. It's a layer. It's all layers, right?
It's a layer. Yeah.
Peeling the onion
Yeah,
back.
exactly, and peeling the onion, I tell people it's healing doesn't go like this, it goes like this. It's, like, deeper and deeper and spiraled and nuanced in the sense of the area down here at the bottom of the spiral and the area at the top here in terms of organs and tissues is probably the same area, it's just a degree of which we've earned the right to access and heal that area.
Yeah, yeah.
It's and that's based off of the genetic blueprint for a lot of people.
Mhm,
Once you
mhm.
get the lifestyle stuff handled, then you're dealing with chronic patterns or deficiencies that are set up based off of the genetic profile for that area.
Yeah, maybe the detox pathways,
Mhm.
all
Yep.
those propensities there. Yeah, that's why
Yep.
the group that I started DNA with when I got certified, their base 3 panels were nutrition, supplementation, which looks at your vitamins and minerals, and then sleep.
Okay.
And I kept going back to this detox panel. And I thought, oh, sleep, I can pull impactful sleep genes out of the food panel.
Mhm.
Why am I using that and not, why is the detox panel not priority? It goes right in with the micronutrients and it goes right into the food panel because all of those things you're taking in, if your body can't detox well, if you have issues with methylation, glutathione pathways, you're
Mhm.
screwed, right?
Right.
So I got rid of this. I got rid of the sleep panel. If you want to do sleep panel, do the sleep panel. But my base 3 are the nutrition, micronutrients, and the detox panel. Because
Okay. Yeah,
I don't think anything is complete without knowing how you're genetically set up for the
absolutely.
detoxing.
Yep, you need to know that. I
Yeah.
I will pretty much treat everybody like they have a crappy detox pathway system because of that nutritional degeneration that I've
Sure,
seen. A
sure.
lot of quite frankly, in the majority of the population, at least that I see, a lot of them, I will almost just assume that they have that, even whether I test for it or not. Mm.
Absolutely. You're correct.
Yeah, and what I've seen
Yeah.
is if you earn the right to phase 3, where you go into repair mode and you improve the function of the liver, of the kidneys, of the lungs, of the bowels, of the spleen. If you improve the organs and you
Mhm.
can make a shift there, then you can actually start to find that the body will work that out for itself more effectively. So
Mhm.
it's not just like a scarlet letter, MTHFR stamp, it's on your forehead, you know.
People think that's everything. I'm like, it's
Mhm.
not. It is a piece of your puzzle, but no, it's not the be all end all.
Yep. And if you improve the function of the liver,
Uh-huh.
then over time you actually can see that those are not as that's not in vital, that it's in your
Yeah.
blueprint.
Yeah,
Eh,
absolutely. So, how long because I want people to understand, and you and I talked when we had chatted the first time last month or so. I want people to understand that this isn't something that is an overnight thing that happens, or it's not a month. It's a process that takes time because your body can do so much for a certain period of time before you're
Right,
able to move on. So I want
right.
people to understand that this isn't a quick process, that
No,
you're
it's
in it
not.
for the long haul.
Well, average is about a year to 2. We've
Yeah.
gotten the process so efficient, and that's usually when you're talking about healing. If cell turnover happens every 90 days, you're talking about you gotta have 90 days sequences of actual full cell turnover. But then also what we're doing is we're using that nutritional supplementation to facilitate a healing response in the body.
Mm.
So that's a little different than the way some other docs are practicing with supplements. I
Uh-huh.
also think it's one of the reasons why sometimes supplements get a bad name, bad rap, is because
Agree.
we don't put them in at the right time and we don't have them necessarily in the right amount. But then we also aren't using them to actually facilitate a healing response. So, in
Yeah.
other words, my people are checked when they first start with me weekly for about 4 to 6 weeks. And then once they stabilize and we get the nervous system stabilized, quite
Mhm.
frankly, then they'll start to be able to check in with me on average twice a month. And
Mhm.
all I'm doing there is just, like, basically tweaking whatever it is that they're taking and making sure that they're taking supplements, they're always moving them forward in the healing process. So a
Mhm.
healing cycle would have a start point, a midpoint, and an end point, and then once that was done, and usually for most little stressors that we'll find, it'll take a couple weeks before then
Mhm.
you'll be either ready to add in another thing and or graduate another thing out, and then that's when their healing program, their supplement program changes. And so most like I said, it's not like, spot on, like, sometimes they'll go through a healing cycle a little faster for a week or so, and then we'll need to do it sometimes they'll go 3 to 4 weeks before that healing cycle changes. And then the further we get them along in the process, the more stable they start to get too. So over time, we're moving them like we might once they get into maintenance, we don't talk to them that often. They're just on
Yeah.
whole food nutrition that's really supporting their longevity and their anti-aging, their cardiovascular
Sure.
health, that kind of thing. Mhm.
Okay. And so if someone wants to work with you, do you work remotely?
Mhm. I do work with people all over the country. Mostly we're limited right now at this stage just based on the country because most of the tools and the supplements that I'm using are what's available here, and trying to ship things out of the US is really a
Oh,
challenge.
yeah.
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 I'm hoping that eventually we'll adapt it so that we can work with people depending on what products available in their country, and it'll be set up that way to do that as we scale further. But right now, yeah, and sad story, I got into a new space just a few years ago. And I had started doing where I was working with people not just in the local area, but in and that was mostly because it was growing because what I did was unique and my patients had family members, and they just wanted them to have access to me, and then
Huh?
COVID also propelled it a little bit, but, like, it was 2022, I think, I moved into a new space that was, like, double the size, and then, like, I'm like 50% of my clients are on the phone.
Huh? Huh?
Face,
Why do I need this much? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, but yeah, more and more people are doing that. Even the people that are in our local area, our
Sure.
traffic is so horrendous.
Oh yeah.
And so they'll opt for me to do it remote, and it works really well. And it's mostly just takes an open mind for the process. And again, I like to have my favorite clients are the ones that others have warmed up to an extent to.
Right. They know
Yeah.
they know what's looking at coming in. So how would people reach you?
So they can reach me through in the show notes. We'll have some
Of
links to get
everything.
access. There's a free guide in there too that people can read if they want to get a little bit more information about what we do. But yeah, and then we offer free discovery calls, 10-15 minute phone conversation for people that are really just looking to get a little bit more information. And then there will be a discount, an opportunity for your listeners to get a discount on initial consultation.
Oh,
You'll take me up on my offer too. And we can do some further analysis with even your situation. I love that.
yeah. I would love that too. So what's your website?
It's out. There's a few different landing pages. My brick
Okay.
and mortar is in Denver, Colorado, just south of Denver. That's paramountwell.com. But then also I have the resiliency method is really where probably most people want to start because that gives access into getting linked up with a either discovery call or initial consultation. And then my process is adaptable. So if they've already worked with practitioners and that have gotten them to a certain point, in my analysis, I can actually, the initial consultation, I can determine where they're going to fit. Because like I
Oh,
said,
sure. They may be in stage 2 or
yeah,
stage.
so a lot of people
Oh, okay.
actually, I'm not going to repeat what somebody else's good work did.
Yes.
So if
Yes.
they've already gotten through phase 1, I'm gonna come with a treatment plan that's gonna start picking them up at phase 2.
I love
So
it.
that's I'm not interested in losing efficiencies from what other people and the good work that other people have
Yeah.
done.
Yeah. And that's the way to recognize with what we do that everyone has worked with somebody else, it seems like, that has gotten them to a certain point. And we don't diss that. We take what they might have gotten from there and then we put that into what we do. Yeah, I
I
love that you do
I'm
that.
always touting that because I feel like one of the disadvantages that we're at as practitioners, and especially in the world of natural or alternative medicine or whatever you want to call it, is we're there's so much need for us, and there's so much. And this was me for many years, just like with my head down, just like doing my thing, but almost like in a little bit of a tunnel. And one of the things that I've gotten the benefit of from being a part of networking groups, and I just came back from Cancun, we were, out there meeting and such, is just
What
the
a rough networking place.
yeah, let me tell you. Yeah, and just like the value of just hearing what others are doing, learning from each other, and then really just trying to understand how we can complement each other because ultimately we will never take over the pharma machine if we don't start to look at ways to leverage each other and our
Yeah.
time because we're still limited with time. So,
Yeah.
ultimately I'm a big believer we got to figure out ways to really like work together, leverage each other, put people in at certain points. We want a result. We all want the same thing.
We absolutely do. We want to help people. That's the
Yeah,
biggest thing. Is we want to help people not feel like we had to feel
and
right
we
for
want
so
to take
long.
them from big pharma.
Oh yeah.
Want
It's gonna
them
be
off that
interesting to
machine.
see.
Mhm,
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how things go.
mhm.
What RFK might do to work to with this big pharma. Again, pharmaceuticals, some of them have their place, but the body is an amazing machine when you give it what it needs mentally,
Incredible.
physically, spiritually. And I love what you said about working with other people. Partnerships are where it's at. And it started with me
Mhm.
in 2020 when everything shut down. That's how I
Yep,
found the PH 360, people looking to partner up to put a program together.
yep.
I think we're all like, we're better collectively than we are just on our own. Why not work with each other? It's not about a competition. When you find someone whose things fit with yours, it's a beautiful marriage
Yeah, absolutely.
that benefits the patient or the client.
And that's what it's about.
So absolutely. I love it. I love it. This is why we connected and this has been awesome. Okay, so we will have all of your information in the show notes, everybody.
Yeah.
So go in and check it out. Reach out to Dr. Erika if you're at a standstill point of something is still off.
Yeah.
And if you need a place to start, hit me up too. There's just really good avenues here you can go with her. So thank you so much. This has just been a fantastic conversation. And if you saw my notes writing down my aha moments, look at this. It's like crazy. Me taking this in. Yes, I am. Just lots of aha moments for me. And again, this is a PH360 has Chinese medicine in it for a reason.
Yep.
It's been around for thousands of years for a reason. And it's not foo-foo. it is definitely, it got the proof behind it, the science behind it. So yeah. Yeah. So thank you for enlightening us.
Yeah.
And hopefully we can get some people getting help from you to become optimal as well. Thank you for being here. It's been wonderful.
Susan, appreciate you.
And thank you everybody for listening. Please, please, please share this podcast. It might help somebody. You never know. One person, if you reach one person and make a difference, share this. So go out there, be your most authentic selves, and make it a great day. Thanks so much for tuning into my podcast. If you enjoyed this week's episode, I'd love for you to share it with someone who would find the information useful. Also, if you can leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts, it'll help the information get out to others. You can check out my podcast site and sign up for my newsletter for updates and upcoming shows, and that link is in the show notes below. And go make it a great day and let your authentic self shine.